My name is Andrew Rathgeber, and I am the Assistant Director for King Lear and the Fight Director for both King Lear and Twelfth Night, as well as Intimacy Director. The thing that excites me the most as a fight choreographer is probably getting to meet all of the actors that are on the shows and on the productions, and then figuring out how those puzzle pieces come together to tell the story. How do I use movement to tell stories in the fight sequences? I typically utilize movement in a way that covers the whole stage. We really want to tell big stories. We have big parks to fill. We have a lot of, things vying for attention across the park. I like to focus again, like building characters and making sure that the characters are moving in the ways that they should, right? If there's a character that doesn't necessarily know how to fight, they're moving differently than the character that really knows how to fight and is really experienced fighting.
Yeah, because there's right? If you can prep it like you're almost like drawing a bow. There, I guess you have to worry about coming with it now. Yeah.
The weapons that happen, the weapons that are pulled out and that are utilized in the fights, right, are just an extension of the actor. You can think of it as another limb, and it's not necessarily that it's something different.
Quick in, right? But like audience, because this is the first time the knife gets drawn, audience needs to see that. It's like, that's a moment that lives in suspension, right? Up here, there. Like I'd say almost like even a half beat here.
Like in King Lear, we're using a lot of knife fights. It's set in 1880 Montana, so not a whole lot of, rapiers and daggers or broadswords flying around at that point, but everybody had, a hunting utility knife. That's gonna, as soon as somebody pulls that out, that changes the temperature in the entire room, right? For a good thing or a bad thing for that character. If you're the character that pulls the knife out first, thinking that you've got the advantage on somebody else, but then that person has a knife, all of a sudden it's a chess match, right? Who's gonna move first? And your focus is always on where the knife is. So I think that that's really interesting, and it's, in my opinion, it's one of the harder styles of combat to choreograph because it's armed. You're worried about, the danger of the blade, both as an actor, because that's an actual piece of metal that you're wielding around, right? You can't hurt somebody with it. They're not sharp. They're not super, super pointy, right? We've dulled them down as much as we can. Kind of trying to figure out how to stage it in an honest way with it still looking like the characters know what they're doing, right? And with that rehearsal practice, there's a pretty good analogy that for every minute of stage combat that you see on stage, there's been 3 hours of rehearsal up to that point. But, fights, in my opinion, happen whenever language fails, right? So whenever you can't have that agreement anymore, you then subvert to violence. So it's got to be bigger, right? And these shows are of a huge scale, the intentions are so high, they're at their wits' end. And then all of a sudden, once they cannot communicate with anybody anymore, then they start fighting. So it's got to be really driven by the scene ahead of it, right? We have to see the violence coming, because if people are just talking like they're in a coffee shop and all of a sudden they're in a knife fight, it doesn't make too much sense. So really just kind of trying to move it with the scene, dynamic, keep it rotating, keep it active, and honest with the characters.
Grab my knife.
Yeah, that was